In this problem, we're given two functions, f and g, as a set of ordered pairs, and we're asked to do several function compositions. For example, in the first problem, we're supposed to find f of g of 7. Because I'm asked to apply function notation and I'm given a set of points, I might remind you that to translate back and forth between function notation and points, with points, the first coordinate is always the input, the second coordinate is always the output. And with function notation always looks like this. We have the name of a function, and in the parentheses we put the input, and then over here we put the output. So for example, in our first question, which is to find the value of f of g of 7, I'm going to start, because I can't do all the problem at once, I'm going to start by trying to find this piece right here. So even if you've never seen function composition before, perhaps you've seen just function notation, like g of 7. So the fact that you're using the letter G instead of F really makes no difference. It would be the same thing as I said before, except the letter G there. So the fact that I'm asked to find G of 7, that means I'm trying to find the output if the input into G is 7. Because G is given as a set of points, I'm looking for a point whose input is 7, so the first coordinate needs to be 7. So I go over here to G, and I'm looking at all the points, and I want the first coordinate, not the second coordinate, to be 7. So here's a good point because it has 7 in it, but this 7 appears as an output, so I don't want that one. I'm going to continue on and look at this point 7, 2. The fact that 7, 2 is on G means that if the input's 7, the output's 2. So in function notation, it would look like this. If the input's 7, the output would be 2, and it means that G of 7 is 2. In math, if you've got two things that are equal, you can think of as you're going to substitute one for the other. So all of this can be substituted with the number 2. So I take G of 7 and I think of it as actually just going away. I'm going to substitute it with the number 2. So all of this would be replaced with the number 2. Once all of that gets replaced with 2, you'd still have this outer right parenthesis, the left parenthesis, and the letter f. So even if you've never seen function composition, you say, oh, wait a minute, I've seen this before. This is just function notation again. So the notation really is self-suggestive of what to do as long as you start in the inside here and work your way out. So you might notice that the output of the first function becomes the input into the next one. And I just repeat the process now. To find f of 2, since 2 is in the parentheses, it means it's the input. And in point notation, the input is the first coordinate. So go to f, make sure you go to f instead of g. Go to the point whose first coordinate is 2. That's right here. This says if we plug in 2 into f, we get out 3. So if plugging in 2 gives out 3, function notation says that f of 2 would be equal to 3 then. Like I said before, the general notation is input inside the parentheses, output over here. So if the input's 2, the output's 3. Again, I'm just making a substitution. Where I see f of 2, I'm replacing it with 3, and I'm done with the problem. Might be interesting to note this because this is what we started with. It was equal to this, which was equal to this. And if you were doing a test, your teacher would probably advise you to write down the original question with the final answer just so we have some idea what was it that we found was 3. So f of g of 7 is 3. So in Math AS, I would go in there and I would just type in 3 if you were in Math AS. And then I'm just going to continue on since I haven't reached my 10-minute limit on my YouTube video here. I'm just going to erase all this and start the next one. Except the next one, they've switched it on me. I'm going to do f first and then g. In fact, the question is to find g of f of 5. So since f of 5 is inside now, I'm going to start with that question and find out what f of 5 is. The fact that 5 is in the parentheses means I need to find out where f has an input of 5. So go over to f. Look for where you have an input of 5. This point has a 5, but it appears in the second coordinate, so it's not the right one. I want this guy. This guy has 5 as the input, 2 is the output. So that means f of 5 is 2. So I took the point 5, 2 over there and just translated it into function notation. Notice that f of 5 is 2. So where I see f of 5 here, I'm going to put 2 instead, and then copy my right parenthesis, copy my left, and write the letter g. So this stuff was equal to this. Now I just need to continue on now and find g of 2. To find g of 2, I look at the set of ordered pairs for g, and I look for a point whose first coordinate is 2. And then whatever the answer is, that will be my final answer. So here's g, looking for the first coordinate to be a 2. There it is. It's 6. 2 comma 6 is on g. That means g of 2 is 6. And that means this is equal to 6, which means that g of f of 5 all end up being 6. So I'll just go to MathAS since I've got this question from there and type in 6 and just continue on. This one might be a little more confusing because it's f of f, which means I'm going to apply f, and then when I'm done, apparently I have to apply f again. So I'm just going to do that problem here. I have f of 0 really is the same thing. The fact that I'm using the same function twice is actually irrelevant. So I'm going to use the same technique. I'm going to say start in the middle, going to find f of 0. So since I'm given my problem in terms of points, I'm looking for the point that has 0 as its first coordinate. On f, that would be this point. 0, 4 is on or in that set of ordered pairs, so f of 0 is 4. So replace f of 0 with 4, copy the right, copy the left, and now it says even though 4 was the output over here, now consider it as an input and use the same function again. So I'm going to be finding f of 4 by repeating the process, and this time I want the 4 as an input. So I go over to f, look for where I have that point, 4 comma something, and it's right there. 4 comma 5 is on f, or in that set of ordered pairs. Therefore f of 4 is 5. So this was equal to f of 4. F of 4 was equal to 5. Therefore the original thing is 5. So I'm going to go here and write 5. Again, don't forget that if this was a test or something, some faculty want you to write what you started with and write what you ended with, just for organizational purposes so that you know exactly what the question. The answer was f of 0 is equal to 5. So last one, if you have the patience, I will do g of 2, which is much like the last one, just different function and different numbers. So that's going to look like this, g of 2. Going to use the same strategy again, start inside and find what g of 2 is. So I'm looking at the set of ordered pairs whose name is g, looking for a point whose first coordinate is 2. Over to g. Going over to g, I have the point 2 comma 6. So 2 comma 6 means that g of 2 is 6. Therefore, I'll replace this notation, g of 2, with the number 6. So all of that becomes the number 6. Once all of that becomes the number 6, I still have the right parenthesis, the left parenthesis, the letter g. So it says repeat the process with g again, except this time we want you to find the point that has 6 as the input. If you go over to g, I see that 6 comma 3 is the magic point that says if you plug in 6, you get out 3. So translate the point notation into function notation, and it tells me that g of 6 is 3. So the question was to find g of 2. I did the work, and I found out that 3 was my answer. So write that on your homework or a test on MathAS. Since they write g of 2 for me, I need only just type in the number 3. So